you're so good at what you do. It's, valuable for everybody, including myself. You helped me so much with my business. We've known each other for so long. And so part of what makes Hilary Young so great is what you can do professionally, but you're just a great person. So thank you so
Oh,
much for
thank
being my
you.
first guest on the
I'm
Hypergrowth
honored.
Project. And my idea, for the Hypergrowth Project is really about, this is something that every small business needs to do, is to take on the Hypergrowth Project. And that is to say, how are you building the foundation for your business? How are you putting the things in place to make sure that you can support any amount of growth in sales and revenue? So if you hire a bunch of people and you scale up and suddenly your revenue triples, your volume doubles, whatever it is, do you have the infrastructure to actually support that and continue to drive your value and to delight your customers the way that got you to where you are now? And it's such a critical part, whether you're just starting out. If you have 10 million in revenue, if you have 20 million in revenue, these are things you need to review. And maybe you have done this, but it didn't go exactly to plan. And that's what I want to do, is make sure that every business has that opportunity to scale. I've done it, and it's so much fun. It's a ton of work. It's a passion. It's dedication. But man, is it fun when you execute and it works out well. And when you see like all that time, all that effort you put in at the beginning paid off and it was worth it. Um, that's what I want to do, is help everybody build their hypergrowth project and get that done. One of those parts is marketing, is building your brand, is starting to really understand that, being able to gap that difference between sales and marketing. Something that you do really well. What are your initial thoughts? For me, especially coming out of a course in marketing at Wharton recently, it's like you have to focus, right? You have to segment your market. You have to know exactly who you're talking to, who you're marketing to. What are your thoughts on that? How do you really approach positioning, segmentation for your business, and how you're driving value for clients in that area as well?
Well, Wharton nailed it. As I guess they usually do. I have been saying this for years. I've been trying to shout it from the rooftops, but I think so many businesses, um, big or small. I have worked for large insurance companies that I've had to come in and fix this for them, and I've also seen smaller, solopreneurs do this as well. But so many of them lead with like, this is about me. Let me tell you about me. Let me tell you about my business. Let me tell you about what I can do for you. Let me tell you about me. Let me talk. And like, that's not the way to nail branding or marketing, which I guess now actually they're calling brand marketing, right? It's like this overarching, like, core, um, of the brand with like how you market, right? Like everything starts with this foundation of the brand. And the foundation of a brand starts with what your audience needs, right? Like, it's the same thing with, I like to compare building a good brand to like having a good life, which I know is pretty lofty, but like the rules of having a good life, being a good listener, being a good communicator, being honest, being authentic, knowing your audience, right? Like that's something I say to my kids all the time, like know your audience, right? Like these are all really good guideposts for how to live a good life and have good people in your life. And it's the same thing when you're building a brand. You need to follow these same guideposts to build a solid brand. And the first thing is know your audience, know who you're talking to, understand them, not just from a demographic point of view of like, okay, I'm talking to men who are baby boomers and Gen X and they make X amount of money a year, right? Like, what does that really tell us about our audience if that's all worth it? Like if it stays two dimensional, right? So like the
Mhm.
way I approach segmenting an audience is turning it into something three dimensional, and it's really focusing on these psychographic profiles, which are these,
That's such a hard thing to do. It's so important.
it is a hard thing to do, although I think what makes me good at it, I always loved psychology classes. when I was younger and like still in school. I'm old now and haven't been in school a long time, but I always was drawn to psychology and psychology classes. I'm still very drawn to like just psychology premises and like a human behavior and I even remember like loving my English classes because all the books we would read, a lot of them talk about like the struggle of the human condition, right? And like if you read Shakespeare or if you read Greek, like ancient Greek mythology, like all of it talks about the human condition. And so really having the strong understanding of humans and how they function and what they need from you and what they're struggling with and what their anxieties are will help you as a brand put messaging together that speaks to that, right? And if
Mhm.
you're like, think about it, you're also a consumer, right? All of us are consumers. All of us are being marketed to all the time. All of us are scrolling endlessly past things that don't speak to us, right? What makes us stop? Something that feels like, oh, like this is applicable to my life, or they get what I'm talking about, or oh, this is so true, right? Like that is something that will really make you stop. And if you can do that as a brand, if you can figure out how to do that as a brand, it's you are automatically like starting a conversation with your audience. And once you have them like engaged with you, you can build out from there. But, just getting them to stop the scroll and pay attention to you, you have to understand them. That's like brand marketing 101, know your audience.
Yeah. You said so much in that was really valuable. You started off with something that is so critical in you. Is what you're doing, is it what they want? Are you selling what you can make, or are you making what you can sell? And that's a huge difference. That if you're trying to jam something down the consumer's throat that they don't want, they're not going to buy it. They're going, and you're going to hurt your brand. A great example of that was Levi's in the 80s, where they're like, we're going to break into men's suits and be fancy and fashionable and tailored. And their focus groups were like, yeah, no, we're not going to buy anything from Levi's. That's jeans, that's casual. But their marketing executives were so convinced that they could do it, and they did it anyway, and it failed.
But it is really interesting. Yeah, I think, and I've also seen this firsthand because I've worked very closely with CEOs, I've worked closely with CMOs, and I think a lot of the time they are so convinced that they have such a good idea and they have surrounded themselves with yes people that it becomes very hard to break through that noise and convince them that what they think is a good idea might actually really be detrimental to the brand. And a big part of it is like, you can't see the forest for the trees when you're embedded in the everyday work of what you're doing and your business and your brand. You don't really have the same perspective that a customer would have that's just discovering
Mhm.
you, right? Like, and that's a really actually big piece of why they bring me in. They need that outside perspective, they need that outside viewpoint, and they know that they are too like they have blinders on a little bit and can't do it themselves, and they'll bring me in. um,
Mhm.
it doesn't really work when they bring me in and then refuse to listen to me. There have been a few examples when that has happened, and it's very frustrating on both ends. But I'm not the kind of consultant that's just going to execute on whatever your plan is, because like part of my brand inherently is being honest, authentic, open, transparent
Mhm.
with you, and I'm going to tell you the hard things that maybe your internal team can't talk to you about, but I'm going to say the hard things.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been a lot of research recently where you see people are building reports and building metrics based on what makes them look good. Everybody can tweak the numbers to make it look however they want, but then when you take a look back and you look at how you got to that equation, how and what is actually being attributed to this, it's a different story entirely. So being able to maintain objectivity is so critical. So you summarization there that loses some of the detail. Um,
You also lose
so
consistency, right?
yeah,
Like if
yeah.
everyone is saying that the brand is about different things or explaining the business in different ways, like you're losing the battle of your brand, because
Hmm.
your brand is how the rest of the world perceives you, right? And like you as a brand want to control the message at all times. Like that is the goal, that you want to control the perception of your brand. And if you can't even internally get everyone on the same page in how they're talking about the brand and the business and the products and what is happening, then what is happening outside of the organization? Like,
Hmm.
and that's another thing. And this is a big part of what I do too, because marketing supports sales, right? And like the two departments really go hand in hand. And if marketing is talking about the brand one way to get leads in the door for the sales team, but then those leads are having a different experience once they're on the phone with sales, or okay, they make the sale, but then like the actual experience as a customer is different than what was promised in the marketing, you're losing customers, right? Like they're
Hmm.
going to leave and they're not going to come back, and they're going to leave you a bad review, which then becomes very hard to bounce back from. So, you know, branding and brand marketing really does encompass like so much more than just the marketing side. It really looks at the entire customer experience and customer journey with your brand at every customer touch point, and make sure that there is consistency along the lines of like how they're experiencing and perceiving the brand at every step of the way.
Yeah. You have to have the continuity. You need to be able to deliver on expectations. That's where disappointment comes in. That's where the bad review comes in, is mismanaged expectations.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to have that in your mind as you're developing this from the very beginning. Um, so you walk into this situation and you have someone who has not articulated this, has not documented it. What's the first step? What's your checklist to make sure that you have your branding, your brand identity nailed down, and you understand what it is.
The first step is a questionnaire, and um, it's the same, I think, 12 or 13 questions that I have every single client go through. And it really, especially at bigger organizations, I will have all of the different stakeholders fill out the questionnaire. And that is the most telling to me, because I can see where the deviations are, right? Like I can
Mhm.
see if like all of the goals are not the same, all of the way we speak about the business is not the same, the way we speak about the audience is not the same, right? So like it's really a questionnaire to audit where you are in the brand process currently, and then also to get an idea of like what you're trying to achieve, where you want to go, what the evolution looks like for you. And then essentially I do some translating. I go through all of those answers and I figure out, like, I pull out the core ideas, the core premises that, like, I think should carry over to the foundational elements of the brand. And we take it from there. But I would say a lot of people say, mission, vision, values. I would actually say audience and like audience segmentation and value propositions to
Mhm.
me are the two most important aspects of brand strategy. Like without knowing those two, you're not like, who cares what your mission is or your values as a brand, right? Like if you
Mhm.
don't know your audience and you don't know the value that you're bringing to the table for them, if you don't know how you're going to convince them that like you see them and you're going to solve a problem for them, you're it's not going to work. So that's what I
Yeah.
would say, those two
Well,
elements.
it's again, you need to understand what value are you driving, and if you don't know that, you can't focus on it. You need to be able to understand, like, you may think that what you have is the best thing in the world and you're going to help everybody, um, but if the client doesn't care, it's completely worthless. Like, I know that this conversation holds value for business owners, for other consult for everybody that has a business, because you need to have this kind of stuff as part of your foundation. Because if you don't know who you're talking to, if you don't know what they want, then you're just hoping that what you're making is going to sell. You're not bringing something to market that people necessarily want, or that there is a need for, or that there is any, or people see value in. And there's a laundry list of products and companies that have made that mistake in the past. And it's understanding that what you have has value, understanding why it has value. Why does the client customer care, about what you're doing, and understanding why you're doing it. Like what are you going to accomplish for your target audience?
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that uh, there are very few new ideas out there. So, like, a lot of the times you're bringing a business to market that is already, like, the marketplace is already established. You're not, unless you're a true disruptor, like Uber, I guess, is a good example. Like, ride sharing didn't really exist until they came around, but like then Lyft launched, and then maybe there's another, I don't know, but like those two, so like how do Uber and Lyft differentiate from each other to convince consumers to go with one over the other, right? And like it's the same thing, like any business in the marketplace, you have competitors. Very
Hmm.
few are entering a marketplace that doesn't have competitors. So it's
Hmm.
not just about, okay, I'm selling this product, you need it, come get it, right? It's really about differentiating yourself from your competitor, having a clear point of view, having a clear perspective, articulating that very well and consistently to your audience,
Hmm.
knowing your audience, and making sure that you're getting your audience's attention versus the competitor, right? Like, pay attention to
Hmm.
me for XYZ reasons versus listening to my competitor. And that's also, it's not, it's hard. It's not, it is about the consumer, obviously, but it's also about, um, I want to say it's also about the competitor, but like, I don't ever encourage clients to like pay attention too closely to what their competitors are doing, because I think it creates this sense of panic, like they're doing it, I should do it. If you really use your audience as a North Star, you're going to get there first, right? Like
Hmm.
you're going to be the ones that like your competitors are looking to and trying to be like, oh, like, why didn't we think of that? We've got to get on that. We've got to say that, or we've got to do that, or, like
Hmm.
you'll find a way to break through that noise with the competitors.
You need to have a message where you're speaking to the heart of your customer, that they are going to relate to, you're going to latch onto, and is so starkly contrasted to your competition that it's like, no, this is us, and it's nothing like them. And people start to identify with that. They build a connection with the brand, and you see that in lots especially luxury goods. You see, people building brand alliances because of what the message is, or the perception of that brand. um, you what how can a brand interact with customers to build relationships like that, to build a stronger brand perception?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it. That's where content strategy comes into play, which I mean, to me, brand strategy and content strategy really go hand in hand because they all start with knowing your audience and figuring out how to communicate with them. So, my biggest piece of advice is don't feel the pressure to be everywhere. I think a lot of brands feel this pressure like, oh, we got to be on TikTok, we got to be on Snapchat, we have to be on Instagram, we have to be on Facebook. No, you don't. You don't. You can be much more selective about where you want to show up. And I would also say a lot of businesses forget that like social media is really just one arm of a marketing plan. You need
Mhm.
to, just like a good financial advisor would tell you, you need to diversify your investments in where you're marketing, right? So, like, to me, I think email is so valuable because you're owning that audience, right? Like, all of a sudden TikTok is banned because of, political stuff that's going on. Like, what happens to that audience? How do you communicate with them? Well, if you've encouraged them to join your email list, you still have access to them and you can still communicate with them and engage with them in a way that isn't impacted by
Mhm.
private companies, I suppose. Um, there's also content marketing, which um, is, create lead magnets, create things of value for people, create videos, create podcasts, show up at, in-person events, or, it really, the whole point of a content strategy is figuring out exactly which of these efforts makes the most sense in terms of an ROI when it comes to your time, your resources, your money, right? Like, if you're putting efforts into all of them, you're most likely not going to see a big return in terms of a marketing spend. Blogging, remember that? Like, people can find you with SEO, with Google searches. I think a lot of people have lost sight of that because of, like, the power of social media. And I really try to remind my clients that they have to be very thoughtful about how they're spending their marketing time and resources, because that will get you your money back.
Mhm. For sure. That was great. Um, how do you break down silos between sales and marketing? How do you connect those two together?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. You've worked in a lot of sales departments, and I know you've also straddled sales and marketing, which I feel like is common, right? Like, a lot of times they'll put one person in charge of both sales and marketing, which seems like a very large undertaking for one person. But I do feel, and I'm maybe you'd agree with me, that there are typically, it is very siloed. Like, what marketing is doing isn't always communicated correctly or easily or seamlessly to sales, and vice versa. And I think it helps having this brand marketing position in place to be able to bridge that gap and make sure that everyone is on the same page. Because without it, you run the risk of providing customers with bad information on both
Mhm.
sides, right? Like, if the sales team is all of a sudden pushing this promotion and the marketing team doesn't know that, and they're bringing people in the funnel with this promotion, that promotion, it's going to be harder for the sales team. And they'll probably blame the marketing team, and the marketing will, we don't know. And, so I think just open lines of communication, um, which, for any department, like, open lines of communication. Let us know what you're working on. Let's work together to do that and make it happen. And let's also acknowledge that we're working towards the same goal, right? Like, marketing's job is to bring in leads, so that's sale to make sales job easier, right? Like, we are on the same team. The goal for both departments is more sales, right? Like,
Mhm.
convert leads to sales. So um, I think when you realize that you're working towards the same goal, and feel like you're in it together and working together, um, it can really change the whole experience. But um, with the majority of the clients I work with, it is very hard to bridge that gap, and it is something that
Mhm.
it's just not baked into the corporate culture that they've established, unfortunately.
I think another problem you touched on is that it's the same goal, but sometimes it's not. Their incentives aren't aligned. You have marketing that's incentivized by marketing metrics that may or may not necessarily translate into an attribute to new sales. Where sales is compensated and incentivized on something completely different as well. It has to be aligned in that idea of the marketing activities are focused on and driven by the sales results, and in the same way. So many times, across industries, I've seen the same thing where you have departments that need to work together that have you know, conflicting goals, conflicting incentives, and being able to align that, makes such a difference. Being able to have people that understand what the overall strategy is from the top down, and being able to work in concert is so crucial. And I think the idea of, like you said, as someone that bridges sales and marketing, it's really, really hard to do. I would say it is
I'm
the
glad you agree. I'm like, oh God, it's like seems impossible.
it's very much the exception that you have someone that is a, VP of sales and marketing that does both very well.
Yeah.
It's typically a VP of sales that has to take on marketing because they don't have anybody else. And
Yeah.
um, it's something where marketing is so crucial, and it's one of those things where you don't want to cut corners. And sales is the lifeblood of the organization, and so you need to have laser focus. And when the two are aligned, it's like a superpower. But if they're not, it works against you. It's kryptonite
Yeah.
to keep that analogy going. But
Yeah. I mean,
it
I think what you said that was so interesting to me is that like it helps when you're aligned on the strategy. And I
Mhm.
don't know if you'd agree with this, but I have seen in a lot of like leadership structures that they like hold the strategy close to the vest, like it doesn't necessarily trickle down. And I don't know why you would do that. Like, why does only the C suite need to know what the strategy is? Like, why can't everybody understand what the strategy is? I mean, maybe you have more insight on why they do that. I honestly don't know, but I do think it would help. Like, to me, that would be a good change that could be made if an organization is struggling with bridging
Yeah,
that gap. Like, let everyone in on the strategy. When people
yeah,
know what they're working towards and they understand like a roadmap for getting there, they have some sense of why they're doing what they're doing. I think it just enhances everybody's work. Like it
you're
doesn't,
right.
there's no need to hold that so close to the vest. Like everyone can be aware of the strategy.
I mean, the exact reason why, I'd have to speculate. For my when I was in the C-suite, that I didn't do that. It was
Yeah.
making sure that there was transparency, making sure that everybody was in on what we were doing and understood why. That's such a crucial part of it. Yeah, and this is
It's also probably why you got results from your team because
yeah,
like you made the effort to do that.
yeah,
Like not everyone
and
does that.
they see what they're doing, but they understand why they're doing it, and that's such a critical part of buying into the strategy.
Yep.
If you're trying to lead any level of change in your organization, whether it's in culture or changing the dynamic of sales or reorganization, whatever it is, like everybody that's going on along with that, they have to be part of the process. They may not be making the decision, but they need to feel like they're a part of it,
Hmm.
because if it's a military style culture, if it's a military style hierarchy, you're not going to get buy-in. These aren't
Right, where it's on
soldiers;
a
these are
need to know
people.
basis. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that doesn't work in business.
No.
And being able
Or at
to,
least not anymore. I
yeah,
probably
not
used
yeah,
to.
yeah,
Yeah.
not anymore for sure. People that feel heard, feel that they had a part in this, maybe feel that they were able to contribute something that led to a decision that they agree with. They now own a piece of it.
Right. It
They're
empowers them.
exactly, yes.
Yeah.
They feel ownership. They feel passionate, and they want to see it through. Honestly, if you refer somebody, to a colleague or to another business, you follow up on that, right? You want to see how it went, and you want it to go well. So suddenly you have a
Yeah.
vested interest in this. So it's the same concept. If you have this idea that I'm one being heard, and I'm also contributing to the greater good of the company, what will be my success and everybody else's success, you own it more. You're invested in seeing it through and seeing it succeed, and that is such a huge difference when you're trying to make that kind of change. And so like, if you're trying
Agreed.
to lead sales, if you're trying to lead marketing, and you're not involving your team in how you're doing that, you're one, you're hamstringing them because they don't fully understand the task at hand. But you're also losing out on the value of uh, taking pride in being a part of something bigger.
Amen. That's yes. Preach. Yeah. No, it's very true. It is very true. People need to be invested in what they're working on. And who knows, if you tell people what the strategy is, they might even come up with like really good new ideas to help you get
Yeah,
there, right? Like
absolutely. Yeah.
let people
I-
surprise you. Like let people show up and do, do what they do
yeah.
best.
It this idea that you know you have to know it all. I posted on this on LinkedIn the other day. You have to have all the answers, and that's just, it's a fallacy. Like, it's okay to talk to your team and ask them for help. That's why they're
Yes,
there. That's why they're on your team, because you believe that they have value and that they understand their core competencies well enough to be able to contribute something meaningful. Um, and the return on investment that you get from bringing them into that process, like ultimately you may not agree with them, you may not use what they say, but they might contribute something worthwhile, and in doing so, one, you might get information that you hadn't considered or a perspective you didn't think of. You get their buy-in. You get more productivity because they are part of this now. It wins from all sides. I think it's such a critical part to do that. I've always done that in every team that I've ever managed. I think when you see that difference, you let go of, people have this kind of innate fear that if they're better than me, I'm going to lose my job, or they're going to take my job, or whatever. And it's like, no, that's not how it's what's going to happen. They're going to make you look good.
correct.
It
There's a
may,
lot of
hopefully
ego
they
that
do.
needs to be taken out of the
Yeah.
process. There's a
Yeah,
lot of
for sure.
on sales and the marketing side. I've seen a lot of big egos, and it really doesn't serve anyone to like
No.
show up with a big ego.
My hope was always that, yeah, I hope you do take my job because that means I got promoted, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that I like guided you well, right? Like I
Mhm,
I mentored you so that you could like. Isn't that the whole point? Like, don't you want
mhm,
people to
mhm.
keep going and feel good about themselves and gain more knowledge? And yeah, it's an interesting. I'm hoping that the corporate culture is shifting. I personally have not worked full time in the corporate world in almost 10 years, so I don't really know, but
Means you're a good
I
consultant.
I guess it does. Yeah, and like I've dipped a toe back in because when I'm embedded with a client, like I do get a feel for the culture, and I want to say that it's changing, but maybe progress is very slow.
Yeah,
So
it depends on how that's set up. One of the things, like you said, you take pride in it, and I took a lot of pride in being able to promote sales reps into to be managers. And even now, someone that I used to work with, I managed her for a long time, and I promoted her. She became a manager. She now has her own business, and I'm super excited about that.
that's
And
great.
yeah, like that, I love that she was able to have the conviction to believe in herself enough to go do that, and is now finding fantastic success. So you're 100% right, is that you get that sense of pride, but you get success in what you're doing. It's like, is it really altruistic, and because you're getting something out of it, right? But
Yeah.
it's helping everybody, and that's the purpose of having a business, is that everybody that is a part of it is going to be lifted up, because what you're building is something bigger than yourself. If you're just going to build something for yourself, you're not going to really get as far as you really could. Hillary, this has been fantastic. Any other thoughts? Anything else you want to touch on?
I suppose, my main thought um, is that no matter the size of your business, so whether you're, on your own, running your own thing, you're kind of the face of your business, you're a solopreneur, or you have a personal brand, or you're running a big, multi-million dollar company. I think thinking about the brand usually comes last. That's just what I have seen over the course of these last 10 years. And I want to just reiterate how important it is for people to really focus on the brand and understand that it is truly at the core of everything your business will do. It touches every
Mhm.
aspect of your business. And it is, I mean, really your success, your future success hinges upon getting it right. So if you're feeling stuck, if sales have slowed, if it's hard for you to get customers in the door, if you feel like, you're not driving leads or something has slowed down, before you look at anything else, like bring in a brand strategist to take a look at everything, and I guarantee I'll find the the problem and I'll be able to give you solutions. So yeah, I think it's just that a lot of people either don't know that this is something that exists, or they don't see the value in it, like the inherent value.
Mhm.
But it's remarkably valuable to invest in this kind of infrastructure for your brand.
Absolutely. Well, Hillary, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much
Of
for
course.
you being my guinea pig.
I'd encourage everyone else to do it. It was really fun. It was painless, and I really enjoyed talking to you.
You as well, always. It's been great. Hope to see you soon. And we'll definitely talk
Definitely.
soon.
All right, sounds good.
Bye,
Thank
Hill.
you.